Welcome to The Explainer. Sometimes a single event sends these massive shockwaves across the globe, redrawing entire relationships and revealing tensions that were bubbling just beneath the surface. Today, we're diving into a really sudden and dramatic shift in the US-India relationship. And it all kicks off with one single, pretty staggering number.
50%. Just let that sink in for a second. Imagine you wake up one morning and the cost of doing business with one of your biggest partners has just been hit with a 50% penalty overnight. This isn't some hypothetical scenario. This is the new reality for Indian companies trying to export their goods to the United States. So how on earth did we get here? Well, on August 7th, this bombshell dropped. The official reason given by the US was to penalize India for its ongoing energy trade with Russia. But here's what makes this so explosive. It's the timing. This wasn't the end result of negotiations breaking down. In fact, we're hearing that diplomatic talks were actually making some progress. So this feels less like a policy move and a lot more like a unilateral ambush.
Now, you can't just drop a bomb like that and expect silence, right? The reaction from India was immediate. It was powerful, and it came from pretty much every corner of the political world there. Leading the charge, Prime Minister Narendra Modi himself. And his response was absolutely crystal clear. By framing this as a fight to protect India's farmers, who are a huge vital part of the nation's economy and identity, he basically turned a trade dispute into something much bigger. This became about national sovereignty, signaling that India was not going to be pushed around.
But it wasn't just about defiance. From the opposition, you had figures like Shashi Tharoor from the Congress Party, and he was highlighting the very real economic pain these tariffs would cause. He called it definitely a blow, and he was really voicing what a lot of people in the business world were thinking about the hit to India's economic growth.
And this wave of criticism, it didn't just stay within India. The Ministry of External Affairs officially called the move unilateral. China's ambassador jumped in, calling it the work of a bully. And back home, one politician even floated the idea of boycotting American companies. The message couldn't have been clearer. From diplomats to political rivals, India was presenting a surprisingly unified front.
Okay, so we've got the action and we've got the reaction. But with any major geopolitical event like this, the biggest question is always why, right? Is the official story, this whole thing about Russian oil, is that the full story? Or is there something else playing out behind the scenes? So on one hand, you have the official line from the US. This is a penalty for buying Russian oil. Simple enough. But then you have a theory from a respected analyst, Michael Kugelman. And his take is, well, it's a lot more political. He's suggesting this has nothing to do with oil and everything to do with retaliation. Basically, payback, because India supposedly didn't let the former president take credit for a recent ceasefire with Pakistan. And suddenly, this whole thing feels less like a trade issue and more like personal political drama.
These big political moves, they always have ripple effects. And sometimes those ripples hit in places you would never, ever expect. And maybe the most surprising casualty of this whole thing isn't a product or a commodity. It's the future plans of thousands and thousands of young people. Because tangled up in all these trade tensions is a massive backlog in U.S. student visa processing. And the result? A potential drop of 80%. 80! That's the potential decline in new Indian students heading to American universities this year. This isn't just a side effect, folks. This is a full-blown crisis all on its own. And we're not just talking about a cultural or academic loss here. We're talking about a massive financial one. The hit to American universities could be as high as $2.6 billion. Billion with a B. All of a sudden, you can see how the consequences of this are hitting home hard on both sides of the world. And if you look at the impact on campus, it's kind of a triple whammy. First, you've got these crucial research programs in science and tech, fields where Indian students are a huge presence, and now they're at risk. It also hurts campus diversity and that cultural exchange that's so important. And of course, as we just saw, it threatens the actual financial health of these universities. This is a crisis that's spreading way beyond government building. So all of this brings us to the big picture question, the long game. How could a crisis like this actually start to reshape the global map?
What does this all mean for India's long-term alliances? While it's facing all this heat from the US, India is making its own powerful moves. We've got confirmation from National Security Advisor Ajit Doval that Russian President Vladimir Putin is expected to visit India before the end of the year. And let's be really clear here. This isn't just some routine diplomatic visit. This is a signal. It's India telling the world that it's going to maintain its independence, even if that means strengthening its ties with Russia.
So what we have is this incredibly complex diplomatic dance playing out in real time. First, the U.S. drops the tariff hammer. Then, coming up soon, a U.S. delegation is expected in India for talks, so diplomacy isn't dead. But right on their heels, President Putin is scheduled to arrive. Talk about a high-wire act, right? It's this delicate balancing act between confrontation, negotiation, and what could be a major strategic realignment. And that's what it all comes down to, really. This 50% tariff shockwave has done more than start a trade dispute. It's exposed some deep fractures in the U.S.-India relationship. So the critical question we're left with is this. As this pressure keeps mounting, is the end result actually pushing one of the world's biggest democracies away from the West and towards a completely new and very different strategic future? That's a question the entire world is going to be watching.